ahead and review the AFC and NFC North. Let's have some fun. So, starting off with the most underrated team in the AFC North. Ethan, who would you say that is?
Most underrated team in the AFC North. I'm actually trying to remember what all the teams in the AFC North.
Browns, Ravens, Steelers, Bengals.
Okay. That's what I was thinking. To me, I think the most underrated team. I'm actually going to go with the Ravens. And the reason I'm saying this is because, like, the Steelers are the Steelers. They aren't really necessarily expected to win big. But since they have such a huge fan base, there's always high expectations with their franchise. And honestly, everybody in the free world seems to be riding this Cleveland Browns bandwagon, saying that they're going to have like a top 10 defense. They're going to make it to the Super Bowl because of Baker Mayfield and things of that nature. And I feel like Baltimore, because they've lost more than they brought in, I think that people have kind of just written them off and seen them as an afterthought.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'm actually going to say the Steelers are the most underrated team. I know that we gave the Steelers a lot of flack last year, but I mean, 11 straight wins is 11 straight wins. And regardless of their talent or how they did it, they still managed to win 12 games a season ago. They won the division. And while they did lose quite a few pieces, I just think that we have to kind of understand that one thing that the Steelers are consistent. They're not going to be a team that's just going to lay down and take it. And so I think that even though, you talked about Baltimore losing a lot, I would say, Pittsburgh lost a lot as well. But, I mean, they still have most of the pieces on their defense. Offensively, their receiving core is still there. Big Ben is going to be there trying to really right the ship, and I think go out in a blaze of glory if this really is his final season. So with that being said, I think that the Steelers are really getting slept on right now. All right, most overrated team. This is where I see the Cleveland Browns. Like, for everything you mentioned, I think that we saw this just a few years ago too, after Baker's rookie year, and they got Odell. Like, people really were trying to put the Cleveland Browns in the Super Bowl conversation, which was wild. And now in this situation, looking back at it now, this team definitely inspires more hope than that of the past team. But I still think that one thing you have to be able to do is do it consistently. Anybody can be great one year, but can you do it again? And I think that that's really the question that comes with the Cleveland Browns. But by most analysts and fans, you would think that they had just won a Super Bowl with how much hype they got around them.
Yeah, for me, I'm also going with the Cleveland Browns for basically everything that you just stated. People have kind of written them into one of those teams that are instant, like, playoff contending teams, and it's like they haven't proven consistently that they can do that. And who's to say, like, in my personal opinion, they could be an injury or two away from completely falling apart. Like, if Nick Chubb were to get hurt, and honestly, I wouldn't even say Odell. I would say Jarvis Landry.
Yeah.
Because Baker Mayfield has a better rapport with Jarvis Landry than he does Odell. If one of those guys were to get hurt, because we don't know what their defense is going to look like. Yes, they added David Gladney, but I just had went through the roller coaster last year with the Titans. Who's to say, like, is he going to actually produce? So I got to go Cleveland.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm happy you kind of mentioned like an injury or two making that change. Nick Chubb will be a huge blow. Another possible one is if Myles Garrett goes down. I don't care what other pieces you bring on that defense. Myles Garrett is far and away your best defensive player, and you're not going to sit here and try to convince me that Jadeveon Clowney is all of a sudden just going to become a sack master. It ain't happening. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to the positive side. Who is your favorite player in the AFC North?
My favorite player in the AFC North, I'm actually going to say Cam Hayward. I love a good D lineman, and I think he's one of the better D linemen in the NFL, and I think he's underrated also. So I got to go with Big Cam.
I respect Cam. I mean, I respect a lot of players on the Steelers. Can't say I like them though, but I respect Cam a lot. I thought that I probably would go in a different direction, but I can't. It's Joe Burrow. Like, Joe Burrow is my guy. LSU born and bred. Like, I mean, he brought us a national championship. And it's only a matter of time before he's my favorite player in the entire league. But for right now, he's my favorite player in the AFC North. And I was actually thinking about it. It's weird because Baltimore is my favorite team. But in terms of, like, overall my favorite players, there's really not many players in Baltimore who I would really put in, like, my top 5. Like, probably my favorite player is Marlon. It's probably either Marlon, Justin Tucker, or Patrick Queen. But other than that, like, there's really no other player that, like, I love so much. It's really just a collaborative effort in Baltimore, which is weird. But, all right, so let's talk our breakout player of the division. I just said his name, but I'm going Patrick Queen. I think that because of the seasons of great rookies like Jeremy Chin and Chase Young in the NFC, we kind of just forget about the great year that Patrick Queen had as a rookie. Sure, he wasn't perfect, but I mean, stepping into an inside linebacker role in Baltimore, of all places, is very tough considering the complex defense and the lineage of linebackers to come before him. However, Patrick Queen played tremendous and really excelled in his role, and he's only getting better by all accounts from training camp, his coaches, even the little things, little time he spent in the preseason. Like, he has really grown and evolved from where he was last year. And I think that this can be a year where he becomes a household name as far as being one of the top young linebackers in the league.
Yeah, I'm actually in agreement with you. I actually watched it Ravens and Saints preseason game, and he literally was all over the field making plays. And I think that given the fact that, like, this NFL offseason looked very similar to what a normal offseason looked like they didn't have preseason last year. I don't, if I'm not mistaken.
No, they didn't.
Yeah, so like now he's actually going through a preseason. He's going through an actual training camp. He's going through OTAs. Like, I think he's going to be a drastically better player than he was this past season, his rookie season. And I think he's going to take this step to maybe being a top 12 linebacker in the NFL.
I can see that. I mean, honestly, I think that this could be a year where he proves to be the best linebacker in the division. I think that Devin Bush, if he can stay healthy, is definitely going to be in an argument for that. But I think that Patrick Queen is really well suited to establish himself. All right, so rookie to watch. Who you watching this year?
Rookie to watch for me, I'm gonna watch Jamar Chase. I'm gonna give your Bayou boys some love. I think that even though the Bengals offensive line isn't that great, I feel bad for Joe Burrow in that fact. But I think that having Jamar Chase, I think they're going to build a connection that they had at LSU, and I think they're going to put up numbers.
I'm going to go on the defensive side of the ball, and I'm actually going to look to the Browns. And I'm going to say Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. I hope I said that right. But J.O.K., as he's normally called. I mean, if we're talking like preseason standouts, he definitely stood out against the Jags last week. Had 8 tackles, I think a couple of tackles for loss as well. And that's what he is brought in there to do. Not only to really help reignite their linebacking core, but also to be that every down back. He can be sideline to sideline. He's good in coverage, a solid tackler, as well as can rush the passer. And I think that that is something that the Browns defense has not had for a long time. We talked about it earlier. We know Myles Garrett is that guy, but behind him, it's really hard to find guys to really step up like that. And I think that JOK at his best could really do that. But all right, let's talk bold predictions. My bold prediction is after an uninspiring start to the season, the Browns cut their losses and trade Odell Beckham Jr. I think that we've heard the rumors of him potentially being traded. You talked about it earlier. It's clear that Baker Mayfield has much better chemistry with Jarvis Landry. And while Odell is a more talented wide receiver, his abilities fit a different offense. This is not an offense that's going to sling the rock 30, 40 times a game. They really live and die by the run. And I mean, when you have Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, I don't see why you don't. And so just because of that, I think that the frustration is going to get to both him and the organization, and Odell's going to end up finally being traded.
My bold prediction is that at some point during this season, the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to be one of the teams that make a call to get a quarterback. Simply because I think that Big Ben is on the last legs of his career. And he hasn't been healthy. Like, he always ends up getting hurt. and they don't really have great options at backup quarterback. So I could see them potentially making a call to say one Phillip Rivers.
I could see that. All right, so who's winning the division?
Baltimore.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you. I got Baltimore as well. All right, let's move on to the NFC North. This one is, if you ask me, I really think it's a two-team race. But the most underrated team, in my opinion, I would probably go the Minnesota Vikings. I think that in terms of this offseason, they've had a very strong offseason with regards to bringing in talent, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Patrick Peterson was a great addition. They got Dalvin Tomlinson to come play on their defensive line. And then bringing back the guys who were injured or sat out last year. Michael Pierce, another strong defensive tackle, is back. Eric Kendricks is going to be healthy. Anthony Barr is going to be healthy. And so I think that the Vikings right now are really shaping up to have a really solid roster.
For me, I got to go with my Chicago Bears. I know I'm a Titans fan. I'm saying my Chicago Bears. But I love the Bears also. And the reason I'm saying this is because I think that offensively, they're going to be better than they were last season. They're bringing back players such as Darnell Mooney, Allen Robinson. They're also adding Marquise Goodwin from the he opted out of last season and he's returning. They also have a bevy of tight ends that you can have at your disposal. Jimmy Graham, Cole Kinney, Jesse James. And I think Andy Dalton, whether it's Andy Dalton or Justin Fields, I think that their quarterback play is going to be better than Mitchell Trubisky. I think it's going to be maybe more consistent than Mitchell Trubisky, which will help. And they're also bringing back a lot of key pieces on the defense, like Eddie Jackson, he returns from injury. King Meeks is returning from injury. They have one of the better young linebackers in Roquan Smith. I think they also have a pretty good tandem at corner. I think this is a team that people are kind of like they're only focusing on the quarterback player Justin Fields, but this is an overall, in my opinion, good team.
All right, so who's the most overrated team in the division?
It's hard to say the Packers because they're the best team, but I still gotta say the Packers because I just think that they're a really good team, but they also have some really key holes in their team. Who's going to step up outside of Devontae Adams at receiver? I love their front seven, but outside of Jair Alexander, I don't like their secondary. And who's to say? And all it takes really to me is another one. All it takes is an Aaron Rodgers injury, and they're one of the worst teams in the NFL, in my opinion.
It's kind of hard to really call anybody in the NFC North overrated. Because we know the Packers are the best team, and then every other team is pretty much set in terms of expectations. So if I'm gonna say the Bears being a bit overrated, like you mentioned, all the focus is on the quarterback group. But there's also some other questions. I think that we know that Allen Robinson is great, but you mentioned Marquise Goodwin, who is very fast, but he's coming off of opting out of the year. How long is it going to take for him to really get himself going? Darnell Mooney made a few plays last year, and everybody's hyping up his praises, but can he really do it in an expanded role? Not to mention defensively, we know that Khalil Mack is the man. They have very good linebackers, but their secondary, they lost quite a few bodies last year at corner, and so they're going to be relying on different guys to really step up, even though Eddie Jackson is going to be turned on the back end, of course, which helps. But I just think that, like I said, it's not that I think the Bears are overrated or bad or anything. It's just I think that in terms of expectations, I think I don't know. I just think the Bears roster is, even with their quarterback, whoever it is, I think that they're not necessarily in a position to really take over, if that makes sense. But all right, my favorite player in the NFC North, it was going to be an LSU Tiger. And last year it was Jay Jettis, and this year it's my main man, Patrick Peterson, my favorite defensive player in the league. It's so happy to see him in the purple and gold.
For me,
again.
it's none other than Akeem Hicks. If you know me, you know Akeem Hicks is my favorite player in the whole NFL. He's an underrated defensive lineman. I'm happy that he's back from injury. I think his addition to the Bears is going to help solidify them as a top 10 defense.
All right, so I messed up and I forgot to include this category earlier, but who has a prove it year? So we can just give both our AFC and NFC. So yeah, go ahead.
A prove it year, I think for the AFC, I'm going to say Joe Mixon. I think he's received a lot of love, but I think it's also a big group of people that are kind of like, are you going to be a top back or not? Or are you going to be that fringe type of guy? And I think, given the fact that like he's probably gonna be heavily relied on in a lot of ways in the offense, I would probably go Joe Mixon. As far as the NFC approved year, I'm gonna say Khalil Mack. And the reason I say this is because he's the man on the Bears defense, but he didn't have a Khalil Mack each season last year. And I think a big part of it had to do with like some of the injuries that would happen around him. Ivy King Hicks, like he received a lot more focus than he normally would on the defensive front because a lot of his running mates were gone. Eddie Goldman was gone also. But I think Khalil Mack, now that everyone's back healthy, I think he's going to return to form.
All right, so for me out of the AFC, I'm going Lamar Jackson. It's wild because I cannot think of another MVP winner within the last 5 to 10 years who was like under so much scrutiny as Lamar Jackson. And don't get me wrong, some of it is real. Some of it he does deserve, but other than that, it's just like people forget this man is only 24 years old and already has an MVP and has led his team to the playoffs every year he started. And I just think that overall, I think he does get a bit of a bad rap, but I do think that just in terms of Lamar, I think that this has to be the year where he can quiet some of the doubters. Of course, best case scenario with how far Baltimore has come, like in the regular season and the playoffs, you're thinking that you could look at like a Super Bowl or bust year, but at least if you just have to continue to get better if you're Lamar. You have to continue to, show that you're improving and understanding the nuances of the game, particularly with regards to passing. And I think that if he's able to do that, he'll be able to shut a lot of people up, even though people are still going to feel some type of way and classify him as a running back. And then my prove a year out of the NFC North, I'm going Kirk Cousins. I think that this is a year where they have a team. This is probably the best team that he's been on since he's been in the NFL, and he really has no excuses. This is the time for him to really produce and show why he deserves to be their starting quarterback, especially because they just drafted Kellen Mond, who has been playing pretty solid when he's been on the field. And I think that if you're Kirk Cousins, not only do you have him breathing down your neck, but you also have such a good team around you that you have to be able to produce. But all right, my rookie to watch, this is going to be a bit of an under the radar one, but this is wide receiver Amon-Ra St. Brown, 4th round pick by the Detroit Lions. He's a guy who I love coming out of USC. I really wanted Baltimore to draft him, but the board fell differently, and I'm okay with that now. But I think that just looking at what the Lions have, or for back, what they really don't have at wide receiver, if you look at it right now, they do not have an established number one wideout, which means that the ball should be bounced around to pretty much everyone. And Amon-Ra is one of those guys who can play the short game, the mid-range, middle game, and he can go for the deep ball. He has such an interesting skill set, and I think that he's really going to prove himself to be the best wide receiver on the Lions very early.
For me, I gotta go with Justin Fields. I think it's just one of them situations where it's inevitable that he's going to get the starting job sooner rather than later, and I think he's just in that position now to get acquainted with the offense and kind of get his lumps out of the way. So I gotta go with Mr. Fields. All
right, and so bold prediction, what you got?
Bold prediction. I'm gonna go completely out of pocket. My bold prediction is that the Vikings are gonna actually win the division.
I'm actually in agreement with you, so we can just skip the division part because I actually have the Vikings winning too. But my bold prediction was gonna be that the Packers even in the wild card, make it to the NFC Championship, are able to repair their relationship with Aaron Rodgers, prompting him to sign an extension.